How could an ordinary family holiday turn into one of Britain's biggest drug busts? And why did investigators call it a betrayal so deep it destroyed lives before a single gram hit the streets? Birmingham Airport looks like any other. Families rushing for flights, kids dragging suitcases, travelers lost in routine, but hidden in those crowds are secrets darker than anyone imagined. Tonight, we expose the shocking cases where airports became gateways, not for vacations, but for millions in heroin and cocaine. You'll see how a grandmother built an empire with her own children, how a careless mistake unraveled a kingpin, and how one man's calm composure hid nearly £1 million of narcotics. These aren't stories of strangers. They're stories of betrayal, greed, and ordinary faces hiding deadly secrets. And as always, every detail comes straight from verified case files and official reports. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, do you think family loyalty can excuse crime? And if gripping true crime stories keep you on edge, hit that like button so we know to bring you more. The story begins in the heart of Birmingham Airport. Travelers rushing through terminals, families returning from vacations, businessmen clutching laptops, and tired faces waiting at baggage claim. To the untrained eye, it's just another ordinary day. But hidden in this sea of normalcy, something sinister lurks. Among the crowd is a mother, not just any mother, but the orchestrator of one of the most audacious drug trafficking networks Britain has ever seen. Her name? Farzana Cowzer, 54 years old, a grandmother. To neighbors, she was respectable, polite, even forgettable. But behind closed doors, she built a criminal empire worth millions, and her chosen accomplices weren't hardened gangsters. No, they were her children. This wasn't just drug smuggling. This was a family business of betrayal, manipulation, and ruin. What followed would expose not only the mechanics of international cocaine pipelines, but also the terrifying truth that loyalty to blood can destroy lives just as quickly as bullets or blades. Tonight, we unravel 3 chilling cases at Birmingham Airport, each darker than the last. But first, we start with the matriarch who disguised crime as family duty. Farzana Cowzer was no street hustler. She was methodical, patient, and ruthless. Investigators later called her a high-end trafficker, well-practiced in deception. Her empire stretched from Mexico to Pakistan and finally into Britain. While most mothers worried about school runs or grocery bills, Farzana was busy coordinating shipments of high-purity cocaine worth millions. Her overseas contact, cryptically called Uncle, helped grease the wheels, securing shipments and ensuring corrupt insiders slipped drug-stuffed suitcases onto flights from Cancun. But what made her operation so chilling wasn't just the logistics. It was who she chose to trust. Her couriers weren't strangers. They were her own children. June, the eldest, became her right hand. Amy and Umair, still in their 20s, were turned into couriers. Even her 17-year-old son, Hamza, was dragged into the trade before he became an adult. And her daughters, Safar and Sarah, barely women themselves, were forced to carry contraband across borders. This wasn't about feeding a family. This was about feeding greed. Farzana knew every risk, every potential downfall. Yet she built her empire brick by brick, using her family as both soldiers and shields. Smuggling drugs through airports is a deadly gamble. But Farzana perfected an illusion so simple, it fooled everyone. Her couriers booked fake mini-vacations, 1 or 2 nights in Dublin, Amsterdam, or other short-haul spots. They traveled light, often with no checked luggage. On the return, their flights conveniently landed at the same time as long-haul flights arriving from Cancun. This timing was everything. In the chaos of baggage claim, passengers from both flights mixed together. To security, it looked like a crowd of tired tourists waiting for their bags. But Farzana's couriers weren't waiting for their own luggage. They were there for suitcases packed with cocaine, loaded onto the plane in Mexico by corrupt insiders. All they had to do was lift the bags, roll them out, and melt into the crowd. The brilliance was in its ordinariness. No elaborate disguises, no nervous behavior, just calm, casual travelers. For months, it worked. Run after run, they carried kilos of cocaine straight through Birmingham Airport, and no one suspected a thing. But like every empire built on lies, cracks were beginning to show. The morning of November 11th, 2024, seemed like just another smuggling run. Farzana's children moved with clockwork precision, blending into crowds as the Cancun flight touched down. But what they didn't know was that they were already surrounded. For weeks, the National Crime Agency had been watching them. Investigators had tracked their suspicious travel patterns, noting the identical holiday trips that always coincided with Mexican arrivals. Hidden CCTV cameras captured every movement. The Shafak siblings approached the baggage hall, calm and calculated, as 6 heavy suitcases slid onto the carousel. To onlookers, they appeared to be grabbing their own bags. To law enforcement, this was the final piece of the puzzle. Outside, as the family began loading the cocaine-filled suitcases into waiting cars, the trap was sprung. Armed NCA officers swarmed the car park. Passengers screamed, tires screeched, and within seconds, the empire Farzana had spent years building collapsed. Inside the seized bags, 180 kilograms of cocaine. Wholesale value, £5 million. Street value, over £14 million. It wasn't just a bust. It was the destruction of an entire family's future. When the Cowzer case finally reached Birmingham Crown Court in late 2024, the public watched in disbelief. The courtroom wasn't filled with the usual image of hardened gangsters or cartel enforcers. Instead, it was occupied by a family, brothers, sisters, a mother, and even a daughter-in-law. Ordinary faces, but bound together by extraordinary betrayal. At the center stood Farzana Cowzer, identified as the mastermind, the driving force who had turned her own children into drug couriers. The judge called her leadership a complete corruption of parental responsibility. She received the longest sentence, 13 years and 4 months in prison. Her eldest son, Jund, and family friend, Khalid Abdul Kawi, were both given 10 years and 9 months, each recognized as trusted lieutenants. Amy and Umair, who carried out smuggling runs, were sentenced to 8 years, 9 months, and 8 years, 1 month. Safa, barely out of her teens, received 7 years, 2 months. Only Sarah Hussein, the daughter-in-law, escaped immediate prison with a suspended sentence. The youngest son, Hamza, just 17 at the time, awaited separate sentencing. One by one, the sentences fell like dominoes. A family destroyed, not by outsiders, but by the woman who should have protected them. Long before Farzana's empire fell, another man was caught at Birmingham Airport in a way so careless it almost felt unreal. In 2016, Majid Hussein stood at the security line, preparing for a flight to Pakistan. Routine checks, nothing unusual. But inside his hand luggage, a single wrap of heroin. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't disguised. It sat there, plain as day. That small oversight became the thread that unraveled his entire operation. Within hours, police raided Hussein's home. What they found shocked even hardened investigators. 1 kilogram of heroin and 4 kilograms of cocaine. An arsenal of weapons, including a semi-automatic handgun, an air pistol, and a stun gun disguised as a mobile phone. £300,000 in cash stashed under his bed. What began as a minor airport blunder exposed Hussein as a major player in Birmingham's drug scene. The judge called his combination of drugs and weapons a toxic cocktail. Hussein was sentenced to 12 years in prison. And even from behind bars, he couldn't escape, forced to repay nearly £300,000 or face more time. His arrogance had destroyed him. Fast forward to November 2021. Another ordinary passenger steps off a flight from Sialkot, Pakistan, via Dubai. His name is Mohammed Uzayr Rashid. Unlike Hussein, Rashid didn't make mistakes. He was calm, composed, even charming. CCTV shows him pushing his luggage through the terminal, looking like any other traveler. But inside his suitcase, 18 kilograms of heroin. The drugs, packed with surgical precision, were of staggering purity. Street value, nearly £1 million. At first, Rashid denied everything. He claimed the bags weren't his. Then, when evidence mounted, he claimed the drugs were planted. But investigators had something more damning than luggage. His phone. On WhatsApp, hidden among casual contacts, was a handler in Pakistan. Their messages were chillingly calm. One, sent just before Rashid faced customs, read, "Remain tension-free. God will be generous." That single line revealed everything. Rashid was a pawn in an international pipeline. By May 2022, Rashid stood in court, no longer calm. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Another link in the chain was broken. What do these cases tell us? That Birmingham Airport isn't just a hub for family vacations and business trips, it's a battleground in an invisible war. On one side, cartels, traffickers, and ordinary people tempted by promises of fast money. On the other, the NCA, Border Force, and police, working in silence, watching, waiting for mistakes. The stories vary. A mother weaponizing her family, a careless dealer undone by arrogance, a courier so calm he could have been invisible. Yet the outcome is always the same. Lives destroyed, families broken, futures erased. Behind every kilogram of cocaine or heroin, there are shattered lives. Not just the smugglers, but the addicts, the communities, the families left grieving. And yet, despite every arrest, every headline, the cycle continues. The lure of millions, the illusion of invincibility, the belief that this time we won't get caught. But at Birmingham Airport, the ghosts of these cases linger. Among all the names and sentences, one detail refuses to fade. Hamza, 17 years old when his mother pulled him into the conspiracy, barely 18 when arrested. While other teens worried about exams, Hamza was smuggling cocaine worth millions. He was too young to even understand the weight of the choices forced upon him. To him, loyalty to his mother was everything, but that loyalty became a curse. As of 2025, Hamza awaits sentencing. Prosecutors call him a participant in organized crime. Supporters argue he was a victim, dragged into a web he couldn't escape. His fate remains uncertain. But one thing is clear, Farzana didn't just traffic cocaine. She trafficked her children's futures. And in the end, that might be the most haunting crime of all. So next time you walk through Birmingham Airport, watch the crowds. The mother with a suitcase, the young man pushing a trolley, the calm traveler smiling at border control. Who are they really? Innocent passengers or couriers carrying death in their bags? These cases prove one terrifying truth. The face of organized crime isn't always a hardened gangster. Sometimes it's a mother. Sometimes it's a careless man with a carry-on. Sometimes it's a teenager who never stood a chance. The airport looks ordinary, but beneath the bright lights and duty-free shops, shadows move silently, and in those shadows, lives are destroyed. The question isn't whether the next trafficker will be caught. The question is, how many will slip through unnoticed? And when they do, how many lives will their cargo claim before the cycle begins again? If this story shocked you, tap like. It tells us to keep uncovering the darkest crimes you've never heard of. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next case is even more unbelievable.